All right. We have a lot today. I know we haven't met. I don't think we didn't meet last month, and the month before that, I think it was just a newsletter. So I apologize. This one might be a little bit longer, but I'll try and wrap it up as quickly as possible. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about were some of the RSM updates that you guys have seen. Some of the changes, some of them are, I like all the changes so far, but I know some of them have been not working correctly. So we are working on some of these. The SC changes on the home screen, you'll see that lovely button at the top. Let's see if I can pull that. Okay. Can y'all still see my screen or no?
Yes.
Okay, and it's showing the RSM.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sometimes I don't know if I'm sharing just a document or what. So this SC changes here that just shows you guys, oh, I just cleared mine a minute ago. How many kids, if they've moved back and forth from SC, yes to SC, no, just so you guys can track that. What we want you to do with that is just to double check if they've been moved from SC, yes to SC, no, so back to general education, that you're confirming that the service ended, because the withdrawals, it automatically ends the service for you, but for this it does not. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that, that's what we're looking for that. And then also if they are moving from general education to special education, that you're looking for that new IEP if you haven't already, because these are kids that won't normally pop up under your new enrollees down here. So we just want to make sure that they don't go missed. And we did look, I was looking with Oklahoma today, and they did not update over the last 4 days, as y'all have noticed also with your new enrollees and withdrawn kids that were not updating. They also have not updated. So if you take a look and your list looks a little weird, just kind of make a note of who to go back and check. I believe the developer was supposed to have everyone back in. He said within the hour, about an hour ago, but I haven't had time to go and check everyone's lists who have sent me their lists. So he is still working on that, something to do with something K-12 has done that he was not expecting. So we should have everyone starting to import in by the end of the day. If the RSM goes down for a few minutes, just know that that's what it is. He has to shut it down to have all the new kids pop in that everyone is missing. So I'm hoping that will be updated by the close of today, but I was also hoping it would be updated by the close of yesterday. So we're continuing to keep our fingers crossed on that. All right, so we've got the SC changes on the home screen, and then services with the end date before the start date on the home screen. This is the same report you guys were running, that service start date report. It's just now on the home screen because we really like to put things there. A lot of people weren't catching those in time before a provider had already put some kind of invoicing on it. So we wanted to get it to you the same day. So when this happens the most is when enrollment decides to change their enrollment dates. So you get a new kid who's supposed to start on 2/3, and then say they did not get all of their paperwork in time to enrollment. So enrollment pushes them back to to the following week, to 2/10. So you had already put in services to start 2/3. You don't get a notice that they've pushed back the enrollment date. So that's why those are on there. They're supposed to re-pop up on your new enrollee screen, but this will catch you if you put in services to go back and make sure those service start dates are changed. So that's all that is. The monitor tab, as Tara shared at our national meeting, has those 2 new reports on there. And we've been it's still in beta. We're still working through it. We do have everything that's been invoiced on those. And then I was looking through it with Indiana, and she pointed out that it was missing some stuff for her. And he said, oh, you want this stuff was past invoiced for service lines that have ended? And I'm like, yes, any service line. So any service lines that had ended, he was not putting those hours over onto there. So he's working on correcting that today. But once he corrects that, ideally, if they've entered anything in the RSM for this kid, whether the invoice was submitted or not, even if it's just on the therapist side with their notes, it will show up on this tracker for you guys to have what we call up to the minute knowledge on how the services are going. So the only way this is helpful to you is if you are a school that does require them to submit notes weekly in the RSM. Otherwise, this will be helpful for when you're looking through at the end of a month of invoicing to look through and make sure no kids missed or were overseen, and kind of looking at the frequencies in a big picture. So we don't mean for this to replace that lovely total hours owed report review that you guys all get to do. It's just meant to make it easier monthly to just kind of spot check. So this is not going to have all of the details that the active student service report has in it. This is meant to just be the very cut, dry, basic kids seen 4 times a week. Here are the weeks. Here's how many times they were seen. There won't be any notes or anything like that on there. It's just a spot check that way, just to make sure no one's getting missed. So that will be available to y'all under the monitor tab. And like I said, that should be updated by the end of today with all of the past stuff, even for service lines that have ended. And then the total hours owed report will still need to be done, but we've moved that to a quarterly or semesterly review. So where it was monthly on y'all's Trello boards, if you want to update that to quarterly, at the end of each quarter is a good time to check. We just discovered what you guys discovered. It's a massive report. It's a pain to run. And it's also a pain for the providers to look at that often. So this way, everyone's looking at it 2 to 4 times a year, and we can get those AC lines in. So y'all make sure that at this point in time, we should have done that for first semester by now. So the documents tab is the next thing under the student edit screen. So this is I like my shortcuts. So if you go to the edit screen up here, you can now float over to their documents and you can go back. So he added that in here last week for us. And then y'all have already seen the document option here. But if you're in the edit screen and you need to peek at something, you can just open it right there and then go back. So we have that on there now. And then the updated training videos under the resource tab. Laura Quijada has been working very hard at getting some updated training videos for us. So we do have some that have popped through on all 3 sides, so provider side, teacher side, our side. So you guys can check that out under the resources tab if you need some updated training under training, and you can show your providers and teachers where they can go as well. She puts the date when she last updated things on there, so updated 2019. A lot of those were done at the end of the year. Referral management's one of those that she just added in that she did in December. So any of these that you see updated 2019, she's done over the last few months. So, and we're continuing to try and update all of these. So if there's any refreshers you need, if your job changes a little bit, feel free to pop on there and take a look, or to show your providers or therapists that they have that available as well. So we do have that. All right, manual updates, you guys, it's manual time, everyone get excited. For those of you who are in the north, we've already met with you guys and started scheduling your time to do the manual review. So, and I believe Melissa has emailed out, because she's more ahead of the game than I am, for the central schools that she has, to please send in your Word version of your manual. Most of you guys, we have your Word version, but in case we don't, if you want to email it to us, please do, just to make sure we have it on hand. We are going to do the updates for you. You're welcome. So we're going to put in the updates for you guys from the new template that we've created for this year. Based off of your old manual, we're just going to add in the new items that we have discussed as a team, based off of emails and questions that we've had come through where people felt the manual's not clear enough, or places where they felt it was redundant and possibly repeated itself. So what we're going to do is highlight the areas we're changing on your manual, and then meet with you and your special programs manager to make sure everyone agrees. So we're not going to just throw something on your manual that we feel like should be there and you say, well, that's not how we do things here. So we'll review it as a team. And the reason we are doing this with the special programs manager is it's really hard to get them, guys, and we do understand that. And last year, 90% of the drag was from the special programs manager getting to review it and having time to do so. So we are catching them as soon as we can. Testing starts in March, so we're trying to get everyone seen by the first half of March if we can, and have the new template to you. This is still going to be a template. This is still going to be handed over to you at the end of this meeting. And at the end of the meeting, you will still be able to make updates. Most of you don't have your calendars yet. You may not be aware of certain processes that are changing. You may not know who's going to fill certain roles. There are still things that are going to need to be done by you following this meeting, but at least the little changes that we made, the nitpicky things that take so long to copy and paste into your manuals, you won't have to worry about that part. And the special programs manager review and getting those dates in there, the main review will be done. So they'll still need to eyeball it one more time, but we will have all discussed it as a team. So we've got that coming through. We're also going to go through when we meet with these manuals and discuss some of the audits that have happened. And the reason being is we want to discuss what those audits, what you guys missed as a school. And most of the stuff that was missed is because it was worded in your manual a certain way, and that's not the way you actually do it. So we will go through those points that we see, hey, you missed this on your audit for everything. Are you still going to do this next year, or can we take it out of your manual? So that'll be on there as well. What we need for you to do is just come prepared with any procedure updates that you know will take place next year for us to add into the manual. Check for any new credential requirements from the Department of Education. You can do a quick spot check. A lot of times they put a big post. For most of you who are working in a state, you can choose to follow the Department of Education and they'll email you any updates they make. So just take a quick spot check to make sure nothing's changed there. If you happen to have your calendar or any forms, you can add those following the meeting, or if you want to bring them to the meeting, we can throw them in while we're in there. And then the due date for the final manual for my schools is going to be May 1st. That may change depending on, I know some of you have to have a board approval and all those kind of things. So it will play it case by case, but May 1st is our goal to have it to me, and then I can do the critical components checklist to send back to you within a week of getting your manual. So that should put us on our goal, and maybe this year we'll make it. Last year we did not, but maybe this year we'll make it to have the manual to all of our providers by June 1st. And the reason being is we do have some changes that are going to have to be made. Just because of corporate policies that have changed with invoicing and with some other things that we want the providers to know about ahead of time so that they can train. And also if they need to look at who they're keeping on board with your school or the rates that they're charging at your school because of the changes we're making, we want to have those done before the new school year starts. So it's always been our goal to get to them by the beginning of the summer, and maybe this year we will. Testing dates. Testing's coming around, like I said. Some of you guys actually start the last week of February, some start the middle of March, some don't start until April, but it's coming. This is a high volume time for no-shows and billable cancellations because the parents don't think about testing on their side. So please get the dates from your special programs manager or your lead teachers and send them to providers. If they have the breakdown per grade, that's awesome because then they can kind of see that. If they were given to you at the beginning of the year by them, just make sure that nothing's changed. I know that we had marked off on my personal school's calendar for a specific week, and then I found out last week that that is not the week at all. So we had to update our calendar and send that out to everyone because we don't allow any therapy during testing week. Send reminders the week before with a list of whomever. So if you get that list and you see middle school is next week, just send them a reminder the week before. Don't forget middle school testing is next week on these days. Remind your therapist to check in with your students to see if they will be at therapy. And some of you do block off the whole week with no therapy that week. And if that's what's listed in your manual, that's fine, but just don't forget to send those reminders as well. Send makeup parameters if it's different for testing time. My manual has it listed that during testing time, they have longer than the 1 week time to make it up. They have a full month. That may not be the case for everyone. So just make sure that they are aware if it's missed due to testing, if a makeup is allowed, and if makeup is allowed, how many days they have to fill that. If they don't fill that makeup in that time period, Should it be billed as a non-billable cancellation? All of those fun things that that some of our providers like to ask more than others. So just make sure it's very clear what you're expecting during testing time, because it is a just giant volume of no-shows that we get billed during this time, just because communication's not great. Total hours overview, as I mentioned before, it should be done at this point for first semester, or you should be working on finishing it for first semester. I know a lot of first semesters ended the last week of January, so you might just now be getting there. Once you get all your January invoicing in from your providers, go ahead and start doing those total hours reviewed for a full semester to give you a big picture of what the first half of the year looks like. Send it to the providers to review and confirm first. And the reason we say that is they may have stuff that they forgot to put in. They may not think that they should have put in non-billable cancellations, or they may not have, you may not have been privy to holidays that they were supposed to be seeing and weren't able to make up. Just have them confirm it first. Sometimes our reports don't pull perfectly. We all know that. So we want to make sure that they get to take a look at it first, and give them a due date to respond by. And then from there, if you have to send it to your special programs manager or case manager for approval, go ahead and do it after the providers looked it over with a list of things that you want to add as AC time to the RSM. Some of you don't have to have that approval. Some of you, it has to go to an IEP meeting, to an IEP team decision to add the AC time. Some of you, it just needs to be reviewed by the special programs manager. And just go ahead and get that to them. And then you would enter the AC lines with the RSM, ideally with a due date before the last day of school. And the reason we say this is because I know, because I do a lot of your AC time reviews, that many of you are constantly pushing back that end date because it wasn't done by then. We would really like to have all the AC time done by the last day of school. So if we give them the goal before that date, we might actually achieve that. So try and put it in before then. I normally put mine in the week after spring break, because then that gives them the whole week of spring break if they need to knock some stuff out. So shared inbox email management. So for those of you who run a shared inbox email, we just put some things on here. We've seen a lot of stuff through the different inboxes, and I'm sure we've driven some of you crazy with sending you messages about things, but just some reminders. Emails shouldn't be deleted. So nothing should be going to your delete folder, with the exception of our lovely Trello notices that you get if you don't need them anymore, or spam. Anything that has any student information, anything like that, it has to be kept on file. If anything were to go to court, anything like that, we need that information about that student or whomever it may pertain to, and you never know when you will need it. So I've had a court case that was filed, and we actually, it was a year and a half later, I had to find all these emails about this kid that I just was not expecting to have to find. And if I had deleted them, it would not have shown the efforts the school had made to make sure this kid was getting services. So please make sure you're not deleting emails. They should be going to done. And if you need help with getting an archive, then you can email relatedservices@k12.com. And I believe Tara can set up archiving emails that are older than a certain year. So just let us know about that, but just make sure you're not sending anything to your deleted box. Shared inboxes should be cleared to only the items still pending follow-up. There are a lot of people in these inboxes, especially those that are, if it's a NBC Related Services, that's technically Ashley's inbox, but other people may be checking things in there. So try and keep them as clean as you can. To the stuff that's just pending, when we come and we are filling in for you when you're at the Bahamas for a week, and we come into an inbox that has 500 plus emails, we have no idea where to start, what's been answered, what hasn't. It just makes it really tough. We don't know what to keep an eye on. We don't know where to help you at all, and it's hard to search for anything. So try to keep your inboxes clear to only the items that are still pending follow-up. And that's really helpful to those of you who have multiple people running a team as well. They don't know what you've gotten to and what you haven't. So just make sure you've got a good system in there of where things should go, how things should be flagged, and how long they should stay in. Make sure you're CCing the shared email account on items sent. You don't have to do that with your personal email, but if you are managing an email, it's just good practice to CC that email. That's a shared email. When I'm sending something from the main account from Miva related services, the sent email stays in my personal Stephanie Ritchie inbox. So if anyone else were to go in there and search for things I've sent to see if, did she send this to them or not? I can't see that because y'all can't see that because it's actually in my Stephanie Ritchie email, even though I sent it from technically Miva. So I have to CC Miva so that there's a copy of what I have sent, and then I just automatically mark it to done. So that's just another one. If you are a contractor that is, has a shared email account that you're using, we need you to CC that email account, and you can move it straight to done, that's fine. But that just helps us see what's being sent out, because we can't check the way Outlook is set up. We can't check to see what's being sent, even if you're technically choosing that shared email account to send it from. Make sure you're moving to the shared inbox done folder instead of your personal done folder. We've seen a lot of that, and it's very easy to do. You would be surprised. If your personal inbox in Outlook is right above the one that you're sharing, when you go to move it to done, make sure it's going to the done of the shared one if that's where it came from. Because if you move it to your done folder, it leaves that email account. So just be careful with that. Make sure you have a signature on your shared accounts, not just on your personal account. We get a lot of emails to the national account, and we have no idea who sent them to us for the shared accounts, because there's multiple people in there, because there's not a signature at the bottom. So it just makes it nicer to know who we're addressing and who we're helping or not helping, depending on what our answer is. So just make sure you've got a signature on your shared accounts too. It automatically will go on your personal, but you can choose to put them on your shared. More folders makes it harder to search and find. So there are people who are folder crazy. There are people who I have 3 or 4. I have my invoices folder, and I have my done folder, and then I have, meeting recordings folder. And you can get really, really insane with those folders. It makes it a lot harder to search and find emails that way. Even when you choose to search your whole inbox, it doesn't always go into all those individual folders. So just be careful with having too many folders, and knowing, because a lot of times it's where do you file it? So you've got a folder for each provider, and you've got a folder for no-shows, and you've got a folder for this. Well, if you get an email from a provider about no-shows, which one are you putting it in, and how do we know where to look? So make sure your folders make sense and that you haven't gotten too carried away with them. It also makes it, the folders themselves take up more file space. So it actually takes up more of your email room by having folders. You can mark them color categories if you want, then search by color categories if you need to have it filed a certain way. Or like I said, just less folders less is more sometimes. Consider what might be better left said instead of emailed, and vice versa. And I'm saying this because there are certain things that, like I said, we can go back and, you get a student decides to sue the school, you pull every email on that student. You don't want to be embarrassed by what you said about that family or that student on your email. Or there might be things that just really, I had the other day a very, very difficult family where we were not sure that this provider would be willing to work with them because the family is so difficult. That was something that I said on a phone call to the provider instead of in an email, because I don't need it to look like I'm trying to get them to not see the kid because they're going to be difficult, because that's not the case. And it can be read in a different way. So just be careful about what you're putting on an email. And then vice versa, there are meetings that I've held with providers where they just like to call you instead of email you, and then later they claim that is not what was said or what happened. So some things are better left said in an email. Just a follow-up from conversations. So there are certain providers now, after I have a conversation with them, I send a follow-up email that bullet points what we discussed, because that's what has to happen. So just be careful about those who like to call instead of email, because then we have no tracing of what was said. So I know there are certain providers who say, just text me instead. Well, then we have no way of knowing what you've sent to them and what you haven't. And when they claim that you haven't, it's really hard to show. So audits completed. Guys, the audits. Melissa's probably over there crunching. So contract audit is pretty much done. So you guys don't even know that most of these were happening in the background. The contract audit, as far as them coming through the K-12 team and actually physically auditing your contracts, making sure everything is signed, everything is there, all the rates match, nothing's been added that's crazy. The northern school, everything's been cleaned up with the exception of I've got one school that I'm just waiting on a contract from contracts to be sent to me. And then the central region, they just completed that one. So Melissa and I are going to be reaching out for a few things that will need cleaned up. Most of it's stuff that she and I can clean up on our side. It's just changing the title of things or things like that. But some of it we may actually need your help. So just be prepared for that. The contract team, Lynn, so Related Services Contract, also is doing a historical upload where they are taking all of the contracts that have been in the RSM and uploading them into the new contract system. So those two things are kind of separate. So she's been emailing you this, hey, here's your list. Are you sure this is really your list? And the reason being is she's having to go back in and type up all these contracts. So if she's typing in contracts for providers you are not using and will never use, it's just kind of a waste of her time. So she's checking with you guys first to make sure your list is correct. What I want you to be aware of is she's not checking the inactive list. So if there's someone who's marked inactive just because you don't have a current kid for them, but you want their contract put in the new contract system, you will need to let her know that because she's not going to be checking for those. So sometimes I've got a couple that's like, when I need them, I'll pull them back over to active, but I don't want them messing with all my reports and stuff. So I've made them inactive for now. So just make sure that when you get that from her, if there's someone who is inactive that you need for their historical contract to be added to the system, that you let her know. Most of what we're seeing is W-9s are missing. We've never required you guys to put the W-9 in the RSM before. Now we're suggesting you do just because of this. So we're having to go back and get W-9s for a lot of these providers that are a lot older that we haven't had one in several years for anyways. And another thing that we're seeing is credentials. They're asking for at least one current credential from every provider. So, one liability check, background check, license from a therapist from each provider they're putting contracts in for. If this is a company that you don't need currently at this moment, but you're keeping them there because it's a physical therapist that lives close to Iceland and you really need one there, but you don't need her today, and say her liability insurance is not active because she doesn't want to have to pay for liability insurance while she doesn't have a kid. Just let Lynn know that there are some things that they can put in without having that, without you having to rock the boat with that provider and making them mad. Because a lot of times they're like, why are you asking for something? Why am I jumping through hoops for you when you don't have a kid for me that I'm getting paid for? So if you feel it's going to be that situation, just let her know, and they can try and move on without adding that in there. But for the most part, I think most of them should have at least one therapist in there that's got everything in there. So that's the contract audit. Then we have the invoice audit, and this is done monthly for those of you who use K-12 verifiers. So they go in monthly, they check to make sure our team is doing the right thing. And if our team is not doing the right thing, then they, try and help them with those mistakes, and, we'll audit them again the next month for a new score. Very few schools have received a perfect score. Most are nowhere close to it. So we just got these in last week, and I just keep staring at them and thinking, really? Okay. And here's what we're seeing. What is in your manual under the verification section is not what you're actually requiring, or it's not what you're verifying, or it may be that you're keeping notes somewhere that we don't know to look for, and so they're saying there's no notes. So if that's the case, just make sure that for the manual, when we do our manual review for next year, if you keep your notes not in the RSM, that you are listing where those notes can be found so they know where to look for them. We're going to be discussing, like I said, during the manual review, the things that you did miss. These are not things that Melissa and I can go back and correct because it's something that's already done. We can go back and ask that they re-audit you for a better score. So we'll discuss at the manual review what was missed so that you guys can decide if that's something that needs to stay in your manual, or if that's something that you need to take out of your manual so that moving forward, you don't get dinged for something you don't need. So for example, if the student's birth date is listed in your manual and it's not in their notes or on the line in the RSM, you're getting counted off for that on this audit. So we have a lot of scores out of 15 that are like 4s and 5s out of 15. And they got hit for every single student because it's not something you actually require. So we'll go through those with you and see what we can clean up. And we'll ask for new audits for those of you who are able to make changes right away. Make sure, again, if the providers are emailing you notes for invoices, that you're adding those to the invoice book. So if you're getting them through email, and it's especially if it's not the shared account email, if it's your personal email, they're sending them to you, or some kind of uploading them to some shared folder, make sure that you're getting them put into the RSM. We have had instances where those shared folders that they upload them to, if they decide not to renew their payment with that company, all of a sudden we've lost all of our invoicing notes. So make sure that they're getting put into the RSM or into your IEP system, somewhere that we will always have access to on our side. The credential audits. So the credential audit, we'll be reaching out over the next couple of weeks to get updates on those that need updating. We just got the credential audit back yesterday. So we're still going through those and combing through those. We will be reaching out to you for those who we need you to get an update from a provider. Just so you're aware, the most common mistake that we have seen was accepting a credential under the wrong title, or accepting a receipt or placeholder when the manual does not have that as an option. So we found a lot of receipts that are in place of what the license is. And there are schools who can accept a receipt if this therapist has been with them previously. They can accept a receipt as a placeholder for a couple of weeks, but that's listed in their manual. So if that's not what's part of your policy and what was approved by your team, you would have gotten counted off for that. But again, the most common one that I saw was accepting the credential under the wrong title. And most with background checks, if you have two different types of background checks at your school, one state and maybe one federal, a lot of them were vice versa. And so it's just a matter of Melissa or I going in and correcting the title, and then we can update your score. So we still have to comb through that list. And then Devon Healthcare, I know a lot of the northern schools use Devon. Their liability insurance was supposed to have a letter attached to it. We had a copy at corporate, but it's older. They wanted a refreshed one. So Joanne sent that to me today. So I'll be adding that to everyone's contract books, and then we can adjust the scores for Devon. Basically what that is, it's what Tara's discussed before. If there's a company that has a general policy for the company, there needs to be something in that policy or a letter from the policy giver that it covers all of their contracted therapists. So we know that this is not just for Devon Healthcare employees who are managing services. This covers everyone that they have under their umbrella. So I have that letter and I'll be adding it. A lot of the points taken off were because of that. So once we get some of these things that we know we can go back and clean up, whatever we have left over, we will send to you guys. So just know that that's coming. That one was probably the most ugly of the three. So we'll take a look at that. It's probably going to be in the next few weeks. So it is not going to be this week. Contracts. We keep getting notices from the contract team, so I'm just going to send some more reminders. I think that we've said this several times, but there are still some reminders needed. Please make sure you're using the most up-to-date form from the SharePoint folder. I copied and pasted the SharePoint folder link here if you need it. That form that they say does not get changed has been changed a few times. It is now supposed to not change. It is supposed to be this way. Legal actually did approve the one that's in there now, but it's just good practice to just jump in there and grab it from there. When you do jump in there and grab it from there, please make sure you're downloading it. Poor Stacy is having to upload a clean copy probably 4 to 5 times a week. because people keep going and opening it in the SharePoint folder and editing it in the SharePoint folder, and that edits the copy for everybody. So make sure you're clicking to download and opening it from your downloads and not just editing it directly on the SharePoint folder. Also, please make sure when you upload it into the RSM that you use a naming convention that includes the provider name, the type, so if it was a TSC, an addendum, W-9, whatever it may be, the school initials, so for me it's MEVA, and the date of signature, those are all within the title. So just putting addendum, we need all of the names in there. When we have big audits that come through, the developer can pull all of that stuff for us, but if they aren't named to where we can distinguish them one from the other, then it doesn't really do us much good. We have to go and click on each one and rename them all. So if we just name them differently from the beginning, when we have these big, we have an email from your special programs manager saying we're being audited tomorrow. We need every contract that we have. We need every therapist credential. It's a lot easier for us to get those if everything's named differently and appropriately so that we can distinguish one from the other. So I put a couple examples on here. However you want to do it is fine. Just make sure that those 4 things are in there somewhere. When you're reviewing the RPIs, make sure the service names you're putting on the contract match what's in the RSM list, or that you're checking with the national team to see if a service that can be added to your RSM. I am going to roll over here because this is a big one that we have seen. My service list, so if you go to admin and services, you can export your big list if you don't want to go screen by screen, and that works. If I had audiological services and someone put audiological right ear testing, I want to see if that's something that's in here. And if not, then I'm going to try and put it in a category that applies, or I'm going to email the national team and say, hey, they want to be able to test just the right ear. How do we make that happen? And the reason is we have a giant list that we have compiled of all of the schools to try and get all of the naming conventions the same, because when we went through the list, it was crazy. We would have some that have autism specialist services and some that listed as specialist services for autism. So we went through, this is how I spent my Christmas break, is going through the RSM, and Caroline and I, Melissa and Kate, combed through all of these names and made sure all of the schools used the same naming order and type, and that we've got a master list. We get some providers that send us some crazy things, and if it's not something you're ever going to use, you don't have to put it on the contract. If it's not something in your service list, you don't have to put it in your contract. There may be something that you are needing that's not on your service list. So I may be needing, I don't know, school social work, and I don't have this on this list, but all of a sudden my school social worker quit. So I've never had to have it in here before, and now I do. And that's fine. That's when we ask you to just check with our national team for how it should be named, and we can add it in there for you. But providers are, they want music therapy. You may not provide music therapy, but they're going to tell you what they charge for it. You don't have to put it on your contract. That adds a lot of work for us to put it in here for something you're never going to use. And it adds a lot to your reports that you're having to comb through as well. So just bear that in mind. You can look at that service list, and if you don't see it on there, just email us and ask if it should be on there, and we're happy to say yes or no. And then the last thing is to get into the habit of uploading the W-9s on there into the contract folder. We have a lot of invoicing changes that are being made from K-12 themselves. So just having easy access to those, if they email us, say we need a W-9 for this person, it's easy for us to find it and pull it. So does anyone have any questions after all of that? All right. That was a lot. I did record this, and I will send this out to everybody. If anyone has any questions on the updates that have been made or any of the stuff that's upcoming, just let us know. Thanks everyone for your time, and y'all have a great day.